Ouija board is a piece of wood with written letters and numbers. People use a Ouija board as a means to communicate with spirits. So you ask a question to it and the wooden cursor would select several letters that would form a word in order to answer that question. Just like the Charlie Charlie challenge, some people believe in it and some just don't. However, these 5 unfortunate events that I'm about to tell you coincidentally emerged after the usage of a Ouija board. Number 5. In 2014, 16-year-old Alexandra Warda, along with her brother and cousin, were playing with a Ouija board in a remote village in Mexico. The 16-year-old was an orphan and she was attempting to contact her dead parents. Prior to using the Ouija board, she had taken a drug that would allow her to communicate with them. Only minutes after playing with the Ouija board, she began to scream and even attempted to hurt herself. She appeared to be losing her mind. Although many of you may say that it's all due to the drug, she began to speak in tongue. She was tied down to a chair to prevent any further complications. As the people there tried to speak to the tied down female, she starts to laugh in a very evil manner and then abruptly starts groaning and muttering to herself. That's when the people there realized that during the session, her body was possessed by an evil spirit. A local priest was called to the scene, but he was unable to perform exorcism on her. There's a video of it in the description box down below for those who want to watch it. Number 4. In 1933, a woman and a daughter were participating in a seance with a Ouija board. The mother's name was Dorothy Irene Turley, and her daughter, who was 15 years old, was Maddie Turley. So the two were communicating with a dead spirit using a Ouija board at their farm in Prescott, Arizona. As they were playing with the Ouija board, the board's cursor instructed the daughter to kill her father and that the mother should marry a cowboy. The family lived in a farm, so the father had a gun stuck nearby. The daughter did as instructed. She went ahead, grabbed a gun, and shot her father twice in the back. He was rushed to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead a couple weeks after. Both Maddie and Dorothy were arrested. The mother was sentenced to jail for 15 to 20 years, whereas the daughter was sent to a reform school. Somehow, Arizona Supreme Court overturned the conviction and Dorothy was released from prison. Number 3. In 2014, a mother of 2 who goes by Angela Jackson made a decision that may have been the worst one in her life, which was to play with a Ouija board. Angela, who was obsessed with a wooden board, had been invited over by her neighbor. She insisted on the subject about the afterlife and then pulled out the Ouija board. They started playing with it and the spirit began to respond to them. The board's glass suddenly moved, spelling 2 words, "Die, bitch." Scared as hell, Angela asked who it was. It began to point out to the letters S-A-T-A-N for Satan, and the board suddenly flew across the room. The next night, Angela began to sweat and had a nightmare about a man with a hammer that was trying to attack her. Several days later, the neighbors had moved and Mrs. Jackson had tried to forget about the experience she's had with the Ouija board. At one point of time, Angela was planning to go out to visit her son. As she walked downstairs, she heard a voice behind her saying, "Die, bitch." She was terrified. Regardless, she slowly turned around to see a man with a white shirt attacking her with a claw hammer. He hit her in the face once and blood started to drip down her face, covering part of her eye. She tried her absolute best to walk towards the door but then collapsed. The woman had woken up in the hospital with police on her side. Police were unable to find her attacker. Number 2. Some people believe that certain individuals has the gift to see spirits. 74-year-old Nora Dirk from Jasper had a few encounters herself. She was a woman who frequently moved from one house to another. At the time, she was living at this house with her family for 6 years. While cleaning the house, she discovered a Ouija board. She knew the consequences of using one, so instead of using it, she threw it out in a barrel and burnt it. After throwing it out, she started to experience very odd things, such as ashtrays in her apartment were filled with water. Her 3-year-old daughter would refuse to sleep in the mother's room because she said that there was a family living in the closet. Other odd things such as her rotary phone would randomly start dialing a series of long numbers. She would often hear footsteps when nobody was home and the fridge would open and close at random times. Number 1. 51-year-old Paul Carroll believed that his spirit had possessed his dog after a Ouija board session on Christmas Eve, so he proceeded by drowning and dismembering the family dog. His 60-year-old wife, Margaret Carroll, was thought to be a black witch who could communicate with dead spirits. They also had a daughter who was 37 years old named Katrina Livingstone who was living with them. The daughter's upbringing was very difficult. The only people she can get in contact with were close family groups because their home was isolated away from the community. The mother and the daughter had decided to pull out the Ouija board so they can get in contact with their dead dog. They began the seance and ended around that evening. The next morning at about 8:45, firefighters were called to their house because of a fire that broke out. As the firefighters approached the burning house, they were blown back by an explosion. It was said that the Ouija board had actually predicted that the mother and the daughter would both die. However, the mother and daughter survived with few injuries.